Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Midwestern Archaeology Podcast. My name is Lee Strange, and today I am joined by Tory Schendel-Vyvoda, a curator, lecturer, author, and artist philosopher. She works with the Evansville African American Museum, Lamasco Microgallery, and the University of Evansville. Tory holds degrees from Indiana University and Johns Hopkins, and she's currently pursuing a PhD in visual arts. Her work spans museum studies, art history, theology, philosophy, and medieval studies, with numerous publications and a forthcoming book, The Origins of Prejudice. She's been featured in a PBS documentary, is Smithsonian certified, and has received multiple awards for her leadership in the arts and community engagement. Tory also exhibits nationally as a practicing artist. Let's dive into her journey and the powerful intersections of art, history, and activism. Tory, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me. That's very kind.
So I'm curious, Tory, how did you first get involved in history? Were you always interested in the past, or was there more of a longer journey for that?
Definitely a longer journey. While my parents always had an interest in history, I really started to get more interested when I was lucky enough to go to Germany when I was 18. So Indiana University had this program where they would send high schoolers to different countries to help Americans get stronger in foreign language skills. But also, it was really the first time I ever had been out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, when I was lucky enough to go to Krefeld, Germany to practice my German, to study and grow on there. It was the first time I ever saw medieval art. It was the first time I ever saw just beautiful things outside of my environment. And what really changed my life forever was getting to go to the Aachen Cathedral and going into this magnificent church, going to this beautiful chapel, and then seeing the bust of Charlemagne. I mean, I felt something in my chest that was warm, fuzzy, exciting. And I'm like, whoa, be face to face with this sculpture. And it's the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my entire life. And it was in that moment I realized that whatever this is, I want to do that for the rest of my life. Because even prior to going to the Indiana University Foreign Language program, I wasn't even sure if I was going to finish high school, and I really had no plans. So getting to go to Germany, having exposure to that medieval piece of just beautiful architectural wonder, and then the bust of Charlemagne, that's when I started to actually grow and realize that I like school. I want to actually do something with my life, and I want to figure out what that feeling was. And it was also cool being in Germany. I got to be exposed to so many different people, and my host family actually had a relative who worked at a museum in Berlin, and he was a curator. And so my host family arranged for me to meet him when we went as a school group to Berlin. And he was talking about how he got to curate exhibitions, meet artists, and work with these beautiful works of art. And I'm like, that's it. That's what I want to do.
Wow.
And so once I finished that program, I went to IUPUI, so Indiana University, Purdue University of Indianapolis. And I went from there into individualized major program, wanted to be a curator. Took any and every job opportunity I could get. Several majors later, I was able to work as a curator, and I always had that aha moment with that bust of Charlemagne that also led me into that medieval path, which has never left me today.
That is amazing. I've always wanted to go to Aachen, the seat of the Holy Roman Empire, at least at one point. I've heard that the Aachen Cathedral is spectacular, so I'm super jealous. And I can only imagine what kind of impact that would have on a young 18-year-old mind. Like, if I went to Aachen, I'm sure I would have had a similar experience, just because medieval arts, especially Gothic architecture, is so evoking. It's so beautiful. So awe-inspiring, I guess would be the word to use. So once you had that experience, what was that like, that fascination after your experience in Germany?
Yeah, it's basically the biggest hit of excitement, adrenaline, and rush I ever had. And so once I was afforded access to that artwork, that was it. I was hooked and never looked back ever since. And so that was 2010 to 2025, just to give a little reference point.
Okay.
And what was really great about IUPUI is they had this program called the Individualized Major Program. I knew I wanted to be a curator. I wanted to be a curator of medieval art. And then, of course, now we kind of took a detour, but that's okay. So what was really cool about that is when I got to the university, I was able to create my own degree program, and I was able to work with people in the classics department, archaeological, anthropological, art history, museum studies, and then just other liberal art courses too in German as well. So that gave me access to all the medievalists at IUPUI. And what was really cool about that is I got to work very closely with Dr. Jennifer Lee, brilliant scholar. And I'm so grateful to have had exposure to her. She's the one who taught me about Hildegard von Bingen. And I took her medieval class, I think it was like sophomore year, and we had to read about Hildegard and learn about her. And once I had Scivias, a copy, of course, in my hand. I'm like, this is it, too. This woman is amazing. She was a fierce nun who wrote books, wrote plays, was a true liberal arts scholar, even told the emperor to grow a pair and start getting stuff together. I mean, she is brilliant and absolutely fierce in what she believed in. And so that was very inspiring too. So once I was introduced to her through Dr. Jennifer Lee, Hildegard stayed with me. And what was really cool about IUPUI is they had this program called the Murray Program, and they would pay undergraduates $5,000 to do research, and then they would guarantee them a conference too. And so I was lucky enough to go into that program, and it's funny being next to a scientist who was like doing proton neutron stuff I still don't understand to this day, and then me as a medievalist or aspiring medievalist and all these other programs too. So it's really cool is they didn't limit what the scholarship could do, and even being able to just hear and learn from different presentations also brought Hildegard into my brain, because especially since in Scipio, she talks about cosmological works. She also wrote a book about herbs and medicine, and then you have the theological side, and then she also wrote what's considered one of the first operas. So it was really cool being that experience, doing the work that I was doing, and then also seeing how Hildegard had modern connections too. But at that point in my life, what I was really focused on was her Visio Dei, divine visions, the visions that she had from God that inspired her work, Scivias, and then also the corresponding illuminations that went with it. So really, IUPUI gave me the tools to move forward with wanting to be an aspiring medievalist. And I came close for the curatorial dream. I was lucky enough to serve as the Clues curatorial researcher at Indianapolis Museum of Art, formerly Indianapolis Museum of Art, now Newfields. Did that for about a summer. And then, unfortunately, like all liberal art kids experience once in their life, once I graduated from the undergraduate program, I was unemployed.
Yes. The fate that meets us all initially.
Yeah. But the cool thing is, when you have that passion, it never goes away. And what's really cool about the career path that we choose as liberal arts students is that you have the creativity to still hold on to your passion and sneak it in to different facets of your career. In fact, we're actually going to do a panel called Sneaking in the Medieval at this coming International Congress on Medieval Studies at Kalamazoo. That is the world's largest gathering of medieval scholars.
Wow.
So if you are like me, just graduating, still hold on to that passion, even if things look a little interesting. So after a 5-year hiatus, I joined the Army, did some other stuff, always held on to my medieval background. I even, for one of the courses I had to do in the Army, I taught my soldiers how to do medieval manuscripts for my
that's awesome.
for my Army certificate to be an instructor.
Wow.
So again, like there's different ways you can feed it in. And then once I was lucky enough to get into Johns Hopkins and complete that degree, then I reopened the curatorial book and was able to get my first senior curator job in 2018. And, it's just been figuring out how to maintain that passion of medieval work and medieval studies without actually being in the field.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is you can absolutely do it because we have these things like technology. So I couldn't be here in person with you today, Lee. We could still done it online.
Absolutely.
And that's how I've been able to really maintain my relationships with people and write articles. So I've published 2 peer-reviewed articles, 3 now, on medieval studies, more specifically Hildegard von Bingen. I've been able to do other podcast presentations, conferences too. So I just finally got into the International Congress at Leeds, the International Medieval Congress in Leeds. That's the second largest medieval gathering. And then also to ICMS, I'm lucky enough to do that now for the last 3 years. So then you get to meet new medievalists and continue and get to do that. So I'm really grateful I get to actively still be a medievalist, even though professionally none of my titles are there.
Right.
Ready to dig into discovery? Join the Archaeological Research Institute with a student or family membership. Whether you're a junior explorer, apprentice archaeologist, college researcher, or a part of a family expedition team, you'll enjoy hands-on experiences, exclusive passes, and a Field Notes magazine packed with stories and activities. Memberships start at just $25, and every level helps support real archaeology in your community. Join today and start exploring at the Archaeological Research Institute.
Currently, you are the curator for the Evansville African American Museum, and I'm curious how you first became involved with that institution, because it is absolutely fascinating. I haven't had a chance to visit it in person, but I did get to look at some of the exhibits and some of the media, and it seems like it's such a well-run museum and super interesting in a history that just you wish I wish more people would know about. So how did that journey look?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to become a senior curator in 2018, but as my life started to change, married, kids, working so many hours just really wasn't practical. And also I really enjoy writing a lot and publishing, peer reviewing, doing the conference circuit. So the previous job I had really wasn't working. So I was very lucky that while I was kind of trying to figure that out, I was a board member at the Evansville African American Museum first. And I was a board member in 2020. And they didn't have a curator. I hadn't had a curator for several years. And so I would volunteer to make exhibitions with the community, work with the descendants. I'm like, hey, what do you want to see? What would you like? How can I help you make exhibitions? And after doing that for a year, they're like, do you want to work here? And so I never really saw that one coming. But I was like,
That's
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And one thing I really appreciate about this institution is that the value of education. And I think that is such a core tenet of the Baptist town community. Every elder I meet is always very articulate in the sense of you have to have a good education. You have to make sure you're always growing. You have to make sure that you're always pushing the boundaries, making sure that you're up to snuff on your profession and never get complacent.
Yeah.
And which is why I'm here today and allowed to be here today.
Yes.
They really championed that portion of education. And that was just really attractive to me too. And also what I love is my son is always welcome in the museum. He's at work. They all call him our museum baby.
Oh.
Yeah. So you have this really positive, lovely environment. And what's great about that is the staff, except for me, of course, they are all descendant community members of Baptist Town. So we don't know exactly when the first person of color was in the Southern Indiana geographical location. Nonetheless, we at least know that in the late 1800s, Keziah Greer did have a settlement in Vincennes that eventually was taken by the city. She was actually paid for it, and they used that money to start cultivating Lyles Station. And Kenita Murray, who I work with at the Evansville African American Museum, that's her lineage.
Oh.
So it's really cool that when you come into our museum, you get to meet the people who were some of the original individuals that continue that line. It's never ended. And so at the end of the 1800s, Keziah and her family, and then the Lyles, and then we have the Outlaws, the Ricketts, the Thomasons, and all these other individuals coming up. And so Baptist Town, it doesn't officially form until about 1880s, but there were individuals in Evansville in the 47713 geographical location since like the 1860s. And even a little bit prior to, pretty sure the 1860s census, there was about 127 Black individuals. And by 1880s, there was over 3,900.
Wow.
And so as the community was growing, Evansville did have fear of having Black individuals in a very highly racial Anglo-Saxon community. So they pushed them more into what is now the geographical location of Baptist Town, and was hoping that they would either just choke out because there was no resources there. Before, the community was called Baptist Town, which is a slur name given to people of color, particularly since they had built a Liberty Baptist church. But there are other Baptist towns actually around the United States.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And those Baptist towns are African American neighborhoods? Okay, gotcha.
Yep. But instead of allowing the white community to have that power over the individual that lived there, they decided to embrace that term Baptist Town, just like how the suffragettes of England also embraced that term. They weren't going to allow this other community to belittle them. And so by 1880s, we have 3,900, and it just kind of grows from there, 3,900 people. And what was really cool is this history and this lineage still exists today. And we were recognized for this through redlining maps and also different documents too from the city of Evansville, that this is a historically continuing neighborhood. And we were put on the National Registry of Historic Places 2023, and we just got our marker up in 2025.
Wow.
So
that's
if
awesome.
you go there today, you will meet the descendants of the original ancestors who moved here.
Yeah, and Indiana is one of those states that even today is very ethnically homogenous, so that you have this community of people that was so resilient and lasted for such a long time is amazing. It's really cool, especially Southern Indiana, birthplace of the KKK.
That's right.
So we can only imagine what they would have gone through. I think it was in 1903, there was a riot. Is that right?
Yeah. So we have the Bloody Race Riot of 1903. And what you have there is what happened is Lee Brown shot and killed Officer Massey over a disagreement over a nickel beer. And so he was arrested and brought to the jail in downtown Evansville. And this was pretty sure July 4th. And then once white community or the greater Anglo-Saxon community learned about this, they all gathered in troves to try to lynch him to the point that they created a battering ram out of a telephone pole, trying to break in so they could apprehend Mr. Brown and hang him. And it was really crazy to read the records because there's even this one little girl who begged her parents to take her to watch a man be lynched. And it's just sickening to think about. Yet she was martyrized for long. It's like, oh, because what happened was once they weren't able to actually get Lee, people were getting drunk, out of hand, and they started shooting. And we don't know which side fired first, but there were shots that were put into the crowd, and that girl died. And so, obviously, I'm not trying to say like a heartless person. I don't have empathy. But again, I think about it. Can you imagine a small child saying, I want to watch this man die? So that's why this history is very important to talk about and to think about and look at it holistically. And with that episode, what happens then is we have the bloodiest riot in Evansville history. The National Guard gets brought in even, and there's a big shootout between the National Guard and the citizens of Evansville, and the white community even stormed Baptist Town, trying to, they say, in quote, to Baptist Town to kill every insert negative connotation there. And what's crazy about this episode, too, is that's when you see almost 50% of the Black population disappear overnight because of fear. Because they come in with their firearms, their weapons, trying to kill anybody that's involved because of this one shooting. And that's why, too, we need to talk about these injustices that are done. Nothing warranted that mob behavior, period. And we still see reoccurrences of that today. So, and what's crazy about the Bloody Race Riot 1903 and the exhibition that we did a couple years ago, we were the first institution to actually do an exhibition on the Bloody Race Riot. Yet it's been over 120 years. So we wanted to make sure that we talk about this history, that we don't forget it, because it was one of the most difficult times of Evansville history, but more specifically, more difficult for the African Americans who, again, were part of this community since at least the 1880s, being moved out due to racial fear and anxiety, to the point that the term is called Negrophobia. And Indiana, a Black Indiana historian coined that term during that era, the Bloody Race Riot, because we kept seeing it repeated after the 1903 race riot. So, and it's a travesty, but it still needs to be discussed so that we don't repeat it, as we are seeing echoes of patterns emerging even today. So we are very in tune with making sure that we discuss this history, don't just turn a blind shoulder.
Well, what's interesting to me is that there are other kind of parts of American history that people are taught. So slavery, people are taught about slavery somewhat. People are also talked about the civil rights era, but that's really it. When it comes to race relations, people are aware of that time at the start of the 1900s was so fraught with racial strife. And in Knoxville, so I went to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, there was a riot very similar to the one that happened in Evansville, except it happened in 1919, kind of that same era. And it was extremely bloody and like a very vicious lynch mob incited in kind of a similar way. But I think that's what's so cool about the Evansville African American Museum. And I wanted to ask you more about the community of people. So you said that the people that stayed or that are still in Baptist Town today, they were the descendants of those people that were there during that time, basically. So do you have any historic family accounts of those riots?
Yeah. So when we were doing this exhibition, I was working a lot with staff members and community members and community members. And they were telling me that they were hearing stories from their grandparents, because this again was in 1903. But what's great is I'd say like most of the Baptist Town community members that I get to work with are in their 65 plus. And they have the accounts of grandparents and great-grandparents. And one person in particular, she was telling me how her grandma, when she was a little girl, was seeing the race relations prohibition kicking in. And so why this connects to the Bloody Race Riot of 1903 is that once that travesty happened, we did see a correlation where whites and Black individuals were actually mending somewhat to move moonshine back and forth.
Interesting.
And so we did do a deep dive of oral histories. Now, a lot of the family members didn't want their names to be uncovered. Because,
Yeah, there's a ton of reasons why. Yeah.
Prohibition, moonshining, and smuggling spirits. So, but they did give me permission to talk about just generalizations without naming names. So more specifically is the person who I worked with, whose grandmother was a little girl. She would go to some of the underground operations where there would be like gambling halls where people of both colors would be underground during Jim Crow, playing cards, drinking, and hanging out, having a good time. And she said that those were the individuals that were smuggling moonshine back and forth across the Ohio River.
Wow.
They were able to rebuild bonds because after Baptisttown lost about 50% of its Black population. Really, Evansville, too, after the Bloody Race Riot. You really don't see the Black population rebuilding until that 1920s.
Wow.
And Prohibition is one of the main reasons. And we're not unique in that there were other communities that also were able to build relationships with each other because at the end of the day, spirits and money was a very good motivator to work together.
Yeah.
And also, the officers would not interrogate the Black neighborhood as much as white neighborhoods. So it ended up actually being a, in quote, safer place to hide the moonshine, to the point that another descendant community member had a photo of his grandmother holding jugs of moonshine. He let me see when he went out. Let me put that photo on display. But again, he said, you can share this story.
That's really cool.
And she was also one of the individuals who was helping run moonshine back and forth and working with the white communities and having this underground network of people to smuggle them into Baptisttown with the moonshine and then into the other communities as well. And then they would have their underground establishments around Baptisttown and also closer to where Main Street or Riverside Drive, Evansville, is today. And what's cool is I got to work with the Vanderbilt County historian, the archive, the Vanderbilt County archivist to get more information about the underground moonshine operations. And she had quite a bit of information. And so this did happen. There's an account. And we do have historical records too, and the court cases of some raids.
Wow.
But also that oral history piece that without working with the community and having a comfort level to share, this is the first time I heard these stories.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm not really a good focal point, but even just sharing the stories, other community members, so they didn't know that this was going on to the extent.
Well, that's why it's so important to, even if you are preserving people's identities, that's why it's important to preserve oral histories, because if you don't, once those, individuals pass away, they pass out of living memory and those stories are lost. So that's what's really cool, I think, about the work that you do. So now, earlier this year in June, the Evansville Museum, African American Museum, held a ceremony for some African American individuals that were recently unearthed in a development project in downtown Evansville. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be and when in time those people were buried?
Yeah. So Steve Evansville is doing a sewer renewal project all across the city. And part of that initiative was to start redoing sewer lines in downtown Evansville on 4th and Vine Streets. And once they got the green flag to go, they started to dig. And as the crew was in there digging, all of a sudden a brick pops out. And then they start digging some more and they find a brick vault. And right then and there, they shut down operations. So first off, yay, the construction crew was amazing.
Yeah.
But they stopped, told the city what they found. And then from there, the city contacted CRA, Cultural Resource Analysis, Inc., and they sent a team to take a look. And what they determined was that this was an old cemetery. Now, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So when settler Evansville was being formed in the early 1800s, one of the original settler founders was Hugh McGarry, and he was starting to create Evansville, the city itself. He donated 1 acre of his land to the city to be used as a cemetery. And he said, from this stone, 1 acre will be donated to my fellow city for cemetery, blah, 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 from there.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know where said stone was located.
Oh, no. Oh.
So not a huge surprise, but at the same time, we really were aware that they were going to uncover parts of McGarry's burial ground.
Wow.
So the cool thing is we have a better understanding of its perimeter. We still don't know all of the perimeter of McGarry burial ground, but at least we know 4th and Vine Streets.
Yeah.
Part of it was there. And what's really fascinating about this is, so this cemetery was created about 1820s, and it lasted till about 1850s, maybe 1860s. And just because it was decommissioned then, it doesn't mean that burials still weren't happening. So there's even an idea that it might have gone until about 1880s.
Really? Wow.
Because at this point, 1850s, the Mulberry Cemetery opens, and then by 1860s, we have Oak Hill Cemetery, Evansville, not Indianapolis, opening up. And then that is now the cemetery that we use today in Evansville. And while they were digging then, doing the excavation work on 4th and Vine Street, 75 individuals were uncovered. And what's really fascinating too is they're at different levels of ground as well, because we had the Erie Canal and the Wabash Canal go through there.
Oh.
So what was really cool about this project too,
Wow.
I have not seen them, so I hope I get to see them eventually.
Yeah.
But parts of the canal were actually inside the trenches that they were digging. So
Wow.
hopefully we get to see them, and it'll be on display, because once all the canal work was finished, basically done, this project is over, they just destroyed it.
Wow. Filled it in. Yeah.
Filled it in.
Wow.
So while that is cool, it was also problematic though, because you were finding human remains at all these different elevation points that well surpass the ground that should have been.
I see. Interesting. So
the 19th century.
Yeah. So that feature kind of sunk, those graves sunk basically. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. So but at least from what I was told and from what I saw on the news too, is the contractor crew and the archaeological crew worked very well together. As soon as they found something, they'd stop, the archaeologists go in, and then they just work back and forth. So I think that's absolutely amazing.
That's really cool. And not always the case.
Yes, exactly. Because once we started to dig into case studies, and of course I'm not an archaeologist, but getting to learn from my students and from the community members and actual archaeologists, I've learned that it wasn't always the best case scenario if that would happen. So it was amazing to see Evansville really shine in that moment.
Yeah.
And so once they cleared out the area, 75 human remains were uncovered, and any artifact that was with the person stayed with the person as well. And what was really cool too is even the bottom layer of soil where the individual was uncovered was also taken, so that it would be buried with. So everything during reinterment went back exactly how the archaeologists found it, and they even tried to configure it to make sure that they have the same exact pattern as how they were uncovered. So they didn't take liberty to change or to line them up or anything. That was also really beautiful too. But as they uncovered the individuals from the skeletal remains, they were able to evaluate them in non-invasive ways, just cataloging the bones, looking at teeth, and if there was enough information to do bioarchaeology. I'm sure there's a more professional scientific term. That's where my student comes in to help me, because she's an aspiring bioarchaeologist.
Oh, cool. What's her name?
Olivia Horn.
Okay, awesome.
She's a junior at the University of Evansville, and she was helping me understand this project too as we were working on the memorial ceremony and the community listening session. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So any scientific terms, I apologize in advance. I need my student for that. They were able to determine that they were sub-Saharan individuals from the human remains. And so that's once they established that, that's when CRA contacted the Evansville African American Museum to see if we would consult with them on what to do. And so what happened after that is that was about February 2024. And then about the summertime, we invited CRA and the county historian who wrote about McGarry Burial Ground to meet our staff, meet our descendant community members, share what they've learned and how they determined that there was sub-Saharan African ethnicities in this set of individuals that was uncovered. And then from there, they asked CRA and the county historian, how would the museum like to proceed? And we said, we're going to ask the community.
Oh, yeah.
So at that point, that's when I got partnered with the University of Evansville to get a student to help me and also to collaborate too, to see like how public engagement works, particularly on such a sensitive topic. But then also we were lucky enough to get funding from Indiana Landmarks Black Preservation Heritage Fund. And we were also given grant funds to pursue this work as well. And so what happened from there, luckily my student had a background in community engagement and also community curation is what I went to Johns Hopkins for. So we had at least 2 good skill sets coming into it. But again, she helped me with the definitions and the contextualization and better understanding. And then I brought the museum component too. And so we worked together with the community to figure out what date worked for them. And once we got the date, the Indiana Landmark Grant was kind enough to pay for that listening session. And we had a big gathering of individuals at our museum Sarah then came back and did a presentation for all the community members. And once we were done answering all the questions and going through the archaeological reports, we said, what do you guys want to do? And the community voted that they wanted to create an epitaph committee where they would draft their own epitaphs, because there was going to be a marker of some sort.
Yeah.
So committee wanted to create their own markers and then have the greater community vote on which epitaph would go on the marker.
Okay.
And that when we had the memorial ceremony, they wanted Dr. Reverend Brooks to speak on behalf of the African American community. And they also said that they do want to keep all of the people uncovered, all of the sub-Saharan people uncovered with the original individuals that they were buried with, because there was an idea of maybe moving them to the Black Cemetery.
Yeah.
So on Burdett Park, we do have a Black Cemetery in Evansville. It's called Little Africa. And it was a settlement that formed in about, again, the late 1800s too. There was an argument up in Lyle Station, which is Gibson County, Princeton area, where some family members got into a fight over a pig. And then some came down to the Evansville area and then formed Little Africa. And then those individuals stayed up there. Still related. And again, Kanita, my coworkers, are related to all those individuals. But we said we have no idea who these individuals are. We have no right to remove them from their contacts. And we have no right to change. We don't know what their relationships were.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure they all stayed together. And so that's what the community decided. That's what they voted on. They had 4 different members form the epitaph committee. Then once they drafted their 7 choices, we had a big survey. About 42% of all of Baptist-town actually voted, which is really cool.
That's crazy.
And they picked their favorite epitaph, and that went on the historical marker. And then Dr. Reverend Brooks gladly accepted being the representative to speak during the interment. And then we just made sure to do the marketing to support the community and anything else they needed. And made sure that we were able to answer questions to make sure that we were remaining as transparent as possible. And that was key right there. Because not everybody was able to attend that big gathering. So we wanted to make sure that there was lingering questions, or if people wanted to participate. We even left about 2 weeks of breathing room because A, to process all of that information.
Yeah.
And then if you want to participate or how you want to get involved, no problem. And so at that point, we spent the last year just doing the marketing, making sure the community was comfortable, getting the stone together and getting the epitaph. And then came June, we had this beautiful gathering in about 100-degree weather.
Oh my gosh.
Holy.
That's brutal.
It was brutal.
Oof.
But we had about 50 people from our community represented there. Dr. Reverend did an amazing eulogy and just history too, sharing more about the Evansville African American community as well. But to see that much love and on a Saturday when it was unbelievably hot, and we had the European community, we had the African American community, and the Indigenous community did ask that we hold a moment of silence, and so we respected that and did that. But to know that all these communities came together because they cared about these individuals that we may not know anything about, but that's the humanity. That's the beauty of the hope and why the work we do matters.
Yeah.
You may not know who these individuals are by name, by family, occupation, but they're part of the fabric of Evansville. They're part of that human story. And it even grows into that American narrative too, that theoretically, aren't we supposed to be better together?
Yeah.
And I just think there's something so poetic and beautiful about just that coming together and how it transpired, the whole process, but really just to see the communities together on a hot day when they could have done anything else.
Got a curious rock, fossil, or artifact? Bring it down to Artifact, Rock, and Fossil Identification Day at the Archaeological Research Institute here in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Every second Saturday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Meet real archaeologists and geologists and learn what you found. Free and open to the public.
Well, from what I understand, I think that's a great example of community engagement, which is what museums should be doing, right? They should be inviting people to participate in the history, not just teaching people, but, making it participatory. But from what I understand, those individuals were also uncovered alongside mixed race. Like the whole cemetery you had a bunch of different people of different races, which was that rare for the time, or is that something exceptional, or is that normal for 1820s America?
So it's a twofold question.
Sure.
I can only speak on behalf of at least the state of Indiana, because I don't know outside of your land. So why was McGarry's burial ground desegregated? We don't know. And that's the true, honest, cut and dry point. We don't know why.
Yeah.
Working with Eunice Trotter, who is the executive director of Indiana Landmarks and overseer of the Black Heritage Preservation Fund. She's also the author of Black Indiana. She has been doing a lot more cemetery work, is what she said, over these last few years. And she's finding more cemeteries from that era in the state of Indiana that are desegregated. Or she's also finding more African-American cemeteries we didn't know about. So to be determined on that.
Yeah.
Should probably invite her next.
Yeah, I absolutely do.
So at least from talking to Eunice, it doesn't seem that it is that unique. With that being said, we don't know the why.
Yeah.
And to me, that makes it unique.
Yeah.
And also, too, it may not be unique historically speaking, but when you think about even just myself, if somebody would have came to me prior to doing this project and asked, hey, in the 19th century, do you think that a cemetery would be segregated? I wouldn't even think twice. I'd be like, yeah. So it also checks my prejudice. And it checks my thought process and it checks my biases as well. And so even though, again, it may not be that different because we don't know the why, it could be just people are putting graves in. It could be for different reasons.
Yeah, like economic necessity. Yeah.
Yeah, but it still makes you think of the 21st century. And it still makes you have to humble yourself to think that, wait, actually, we don't know. And I shouldn't be making assumptions on things I don't know because it is easy, you know, particularly with how much embedded in racial relations that at least people in my line of work are in.
Yeah.
So it also is a humbling check. So to me, that's the really important part is I still think it's poetic. I still think it's beautiful at an abstract level because we don't know the why. But with that being said, too, again, prior to this, if somebody would have asked me just point blank, do you think, I would probably say, well, yeah, and here's why. So it's a good way to check yourself, too.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that, and if you think about 1820s America, that is pre-Civil War, that is pre-Reconstruction, pre-Jim Crow, and we just don't know. I wonder if there's been any speculation about, because of course you did say individually we cannot know who these people were, but has there been any speculation about what explains their appearance in Evansville at this time?
So, yeah, there is at least some historical backing for that idea. So I'm pretty sure it's 1750s. We see some of the first Black individuals coming to Vincennes, the state of Indiana. They came with French merchants and they were indentured servants. So you start seeing a population of that coming through here. We also have our other trades individuals coming into the area, bringing their servants as well, and slaves, enslaved individuals. But also, too, there are accounts of early free people of color in this area, too. So there is history to back that up. There are archival records to back that up. And if you even just visit Vincennes National Park, there is their website. There is an account about that 1750s French individual with their indentured servant and or enslaved person. We just simply don't know. But there are historical accounts of people of color being in this area at this time. And so that's why we really don't know if, are they part of the Outlaws, Lyles, Greers, some of the first Black families? We don't know. Are they indentured servants? We don't know. But what's really cool about the community I serve at the Evansville African American Museum, to them is if you are a person from the continent of Africa, you are family and you're going to be treated as such. You are treated as an ancestor. And so community honors that. Now, again, I don't know how unanimous that is, but at least in the community I serve, that they are still considered ancestors and family.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate your time. And thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.